Hi, and thanks for joining us. My name is Amanda Jarrett. I am the Marketing and Communications Director for the National Children's Advocacy Center. I'm joined now by Pam Clasgens, our Prevention Director, and we're going to talk a little bit about prevention and questions parents often come to us with, or other adults who are around children, because we know that this is a difficult subject, but it's a subject that you need to bring up on a regular basis with children in your life. And there's a proper way to do it. So, Pam, why don't we start with what is the right time to start a conversation with your child about sexual abuse and boundaries?
Well, gosh, we do get asked this a lot. And really, whatever age your child is, that's the best time to start. So if your child's really young, you can start having those conversations right now. And I'll talk a little bit more about kind of what you could be saying to a young child, or even if you have a teenager or something in between. So whatever age your child is right now is the best time to start having these conversations. So often we talk about how do you talk to little kids about this? And parents wonder, gosh, I'm not going to talk to my child about sex when they're a little bitty. But there are lots of ways that you can talk to kids about this issue that are not scary and are very age appropriate. So, for instance, if you have a really small child, even before they're talking and walking, you can be demonstrating consent. So you can, we all know that the way children develop language, they listen to what we say to them, they watch our facial expressions, our tone of voice, and our gestures, and they begin to develop an understanding of language, assuming they have normal hearing and vision. And what we can do is talk to kids about, even as simple as when we're giving a baby a bath or a toddler, or changing a diaper. We can just be talking, we just label what we do. Okay, right now I'm washing you to get you all clean, and I'm going to wash your private parts right now. And one of the things, and same thing with changing your diaper, and now I'm going to change your diaper and I have to wipe here. And one of the things that we really encourage when parents have little children especially is that you start off using the proper names for the child's private parts. So I'm going to say the words right now. It's really scary to say it out loud, but use the word vagina and penis. Because what we know is that there's two reasons that you want to do that. One is that if something were to happen for your child and you had taught your child a word that maybe some other people wouldn't know, that was your child's word for penis or vagina, your child might say something happened to my whatever, fill in whatever the blank, whatever code word or you were using. If a child said that to someone, they might not know what their child's talking about. Whereas if a child said, somebody did something to my penis or vagina, that's really clear. And the person who's listening is not going to make a mistake and misunderstand. We know what the child's saying. The other reason is that we think that kids who know these words, the correct words, that can be a deterrent for a perpetrator. So a perpetrator might think, oh gosh, somebody's talking to this child about this, and they may be perhaps a little more reluctant, um, to do something to that child. So again, teaching proper names of body parts to children so that there's no confusion. And again, even if a child's telling you or someone else that something's happened to them, then nobody's confused about what they're talking about. That's one thing. And then asking the child, for permission, I'm going to wash you here, or telling them, this is what I'm doing, this is why. For little kids, it's hard to ask permission. Sometimes we don't want to necessarily want to say, is it okay if I change your diaper right now? Because we all know kids go through a stage where they're going to say no to everything. So, but the idea is to get across that you're telling the child what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then as kids get just a little bit older, it's fine. You can go ahead and start saying to children, these are your private parts. Again, you're using the proper names, talking about breast, penis, vagina, and their bottom, and whatever word you want to use for that, that's clear and understandable. Um, and say that nobody should touch you on these private areas of your body. And if they do, let me know, or tell a trusted adult. And you can teach even little kids, you can go through exercises of who is a trusted adult. So that might be mommy and daddy, maybe another trusted adult is grandma or grandpa, or whoever stays with them a lot, or maybe they're, a little bit older kids who are in school. If mommy or daddy's not there, who could you tell? And one of the really important things with kids too is to talk about that nobody should touch you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable. And that can include any type of touch on any part of their body. And there are lots of ways we can talk to kids about that, but we want to practice that. So nobody should touch you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable. And if they do, let me know or tell a trusted adult. And then again, practice who is a trusted adult and talk that through. And you can talk about different scenarios. So if they're going to go, for instance, kids get a little bit older, or maybe they're going to go spend the night with a relative. So, okay, so tonight you're going to go and spend the night at grandma and grandpa's house. And remember our safety rules. If remember, one of our rules is that nobody should touch you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable. And if they do, you should tell mommy or daddy and let us know. And if mommy and daddy's not there, what could you do? Well, if grandpa touches you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, you could tell grandma, or if grandma does it, you could tell grandpa. Um, so those are some easy things to do when kids are a little bit when kids are younger. When kids get a little bit older, the conversations can be a little more involved because kids are older and they understand more, and their lives are a little bit different. They're spending more time away from us.
That was a great answer, Pam. You touched on this a little bit, but what would you say to parents who are worried they may scare their child by talking about this?
Well, one of the things that we want to reassure parents about is that kids will take their emotional cues from you. So the way that you want to talk about this is a way that's just very matter of fact and calm. And you don't have to spend lots of time on this discussion, but we do encourage you to have these discussions repeatedly. So you can have short discussions several times a year, or anytime that your child brings it up. So the idea is just to be calm, and that main message is that nobody should touch you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable. And if they do, tell a trusted adult. And who is a trusted adult. And by the same token, we also need to be talking to our kids about, in the same way, just as nobody should touch you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, you should not touch anyone in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable. And again, that is something that we can teach kids from the very beginning about what does consent mean. And consent can be doesn't have to have anything at all to do with sex or sexual abuse. And two kids are playing on the floor, and one of them wants the other one's toy. And the idea is we teach children, we're teaching them to share. So it's kind of the same idea. Um, if you want to play with that truck that Johnny is playing with, you ask Johnny, can I play with that truck, please? And if Johnny says no, that means no. And you need to wait or ask him again later or play with something else. If you want to give Johnny a hug, you ask Johnny before you give Johnny a hug. You don't just hug Johnny without permission. You say, Johnny, you look sad. Can I give you a hug? And if Johnny says yes, then you can give him a hug. And if Johnny says no, then that means Johnny doesn't want a hug right now. And so maybe you can just say, I'm sorry you're feeling bad, instead of hugging Johnny. We can teach that same concept when we're greeting or visiting relatives. Lots of people have had this conversation about, how do we teach our kids? This is called bodily autonomy. And how do we teach that when, say, grandma or grandpa or Aunt Sue is coming to visit, and grandma or grandpa or Aunt Sue really wants to hug our child, and we're not sure our child wants to hug them back. And we get questions about that a lot. It can be difficult because in a lot of families, it's the parents and the grandparents or the aunts and uncles always hug the child first, and we never ask permission. And what we want to do is teach kids that they have the right to say no to someone touching them, and that they can make choices about that. And even that's even true with people that they perceive to be powerful and in charge. So what we want to do is talk to the adults ahead of time. So we can say, grandma or grandpa, we're teaching our daughter about that her body is her own and that she has choices, that she can make choices about who touches her. And we're practicing that by letting her make choices and empowering her to make choices about who hugs her and kisses her. So when you come over, I know you really want to hug her, but if you'll ask her first, or if you start to hug her, if you forget and you start to hug her and she says no, we're really trying to teach her that people should respect her when she says no. And so in practicing that in your own, you can model that too. You could even say to grandma or grandpa, we're going to practice that in front of her. You go ahead and hug me, and I'm going to say, no, I don't really want to hug right now. And then let grandma or grandpa say, okay, I'll hug you later, or the reverse. You can try that as adults. You can practice that in front of your kids so they see that. And again, we really encourage parents to have these conversations over and over and over again. The more kids see this and the more kids are comfortable with these ideas that no one should touch them away, that makes them uncomfortable, that kids that we shouldn't, no one should touch anyone in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable. So I shouldn't do that. You shouldn't. The more we talk about that, the more comfortable children are in when they, if and when they are in a situation where someone is making them feel uncomfortable, it's easier for them to remember because they've practiced it and they've thought about it and you've talked to them about it. It's easier for them to remember, oh, this person's making me feel uncomfortable. It's okay for me to say no or to try to get away, or if I can't get away or say no, to tell mom or dad about it later, or who is somebody else I can tell if mom or dad's not there.
So let's talk a little bit more about revisiting that the topic and talking more about it with your child. This is not something you just do when they're younger. Like as they age, as they get older, even when they reach teenage years, this is a conversation that you continue having. Why is that so important?
Well, as kids get older, they're spending less and less time with us at home. A lot of kids are in school and some kids are in daycare. So we want to be talking to them about even from the very beginning. Um, but as kids approach their teenage years, they're spending lots more time at friends' houses and a lot more unsupervised time. So we want to be talking about all of those safety rules that can help kids stay safe when they're not around us. So for instance, if kids are going to visit at somebody else's house, maybe they're just going for the afternoon, it's really important to talk to our children about, okay, what are our rules in our family? So for instance, one of the main things that we want people to know is that your family can have safety rules and those things that you talk about all the time in your family. So for instance, one of them might be, um, when your kids are really little, they need help in the bathroom. And maybe your rule about that is I'm going to help you in the bathroom while you need help. And we're going to leave the door partially open, not so that everybody can see in, but just so that if somebody walks by, they know that, that's our rule, partially open. Or maybe your rule is we're going to close the door um, and just until you get started and then I'm going to leave or something, whatever your safety rule is. And what you want to do before your kids go to somebody else's house is maybe review what your safety rules are in your family. And that might be about going to the bathroom or taking a shower or taking a bath or changing clothes. That's another example. So when we change clothes in our family, we do that. That's something we do in private and we shut the door. And, mommy or daddy will help you if you need some help. But if you don't need our help, you can get dressed by yourself. Um, and then so you talk about, okay, now that, as kids are older, when you go to somebody else's house for the afternoon or just spend the night. So in our house, our rules about what we do when we change clothes and when we go to the bathroom, we take a shower or bath, and who sleeps in whose bed. Um, these are the rules we have in our family. And when you go there, we want you to have the same rules. And as a parent, you can call and talk to the other parent or whoever the adult is going to be that's going to supervise in that situation and just share, hey, I just wanted to let you know my child's going to be spending some time at your house. I just wanted to let you know some of the rules that we have in our family and see if those are the same rules that you have in your family. And that opens the door to that conversation. And you might find out that someone you thought had the same rules, that their rules are really different from yours. And that gives you an opportunity to talk about that a little bit. And then You might even reassess whether you really want your child to spend time over there. But most of the time, it's just a way to have a conversation about safety that lets the other parent know that you've thought about this. And most parents are going to be grateful for that. It can be a little uncomfortable, but the more we practice this stuff, the easier it gets.
Let's switch gears a little bit now and talk about the internet. What is your advice to parents concerning internet access and why?
Well, there's several things we can say about internet access. First of all, there are lots of apps out there and lots of places kids can go on the internet. Um, there's probably no way as a parent, you or I are ever going to know every single app and every single new site that our kids are going to, but we can talk to our kids about it. Um, and one of the most important things is to be somebody who's willing to listen to our kids. So, and to have open conversations about where our kids are going online, who they're talking to online, and how long they're going to be there. Just like you would do if your child's going out for the evening, if they're going to get in the car and go somewhere with somebody. Who are you going to go with? How long are you going to be there? What are you going to do while you're there? When are you going to be done? So those things. And then also about talking to kids about how we behave in person. We behave the same way online, that we treat people with respect and kindness and dignity, that we don't do things to other people that are harmful or hurtful, and that we think about what we're saying and doing so that we don't harm someone else or hurt someone else. And that same conversation about consent. So one of the, there are a couple of scary things about the internet that parents ask us about a lot. One is the possibility of there being a predator online. So somebody who's posing as a young person, or maybe they're not even pretending. Maybe they say I'm 40 years old and they engage the child somehow in a conversation. That can be pretty easy. A lot of times teenagers are very excited and they feel very independent online, and or preteens, and they feel like this is the great frontier out here. I'm meeting these people, and really all it takes is for someone to engage that child about something that they're interested in, and to pretend to be a good listener, and to give them positive feedback. So we want to talk to kids about how the people that you're talking to online, if you don't know who they are in real life, you've never met them in real person, sometimes we don't know for sure who they are. And to talk about how you don't give out your address, you don't give out your address, you don't give out your phone number, you don't tell them what school you go to, things like that. You don't tell them your real name or your real last name. So in other words, don't give out personally identifiable information. So talk to kids about that and be really clear what that means. What is that information that you shouldn't share when you're online? The other thing that we hear about a lot, well, there's two more things. One is bullying online. And so that goes back to talking to your kids about, this is the way that we treat people in real life, and you should treat people the same way in person. And we don't call people names. We don't say things that are hurtful to other people. And we don't share hurtful things about other people. So if somebody's being mean to someone, you're not going to share that with other people. And we do get a lot of questions about and hear a lot about, adults call it sexting. Younger kids might call it inappropriate selfies or nudes, taking those kinds of pictures. So, you can talk to kids about what would you do if, kind of play the what if game. And that's a great game to play with kids of almost any age about almost any topic. To talk to kids about what would you do if, and you can throw in some really funny and unexpected things. What would you do if grandma gave you 5,000 cookies? What would you do with all those cookies? So that's just something fun like that. You could do lots of what if questions that are fun, but you can also talk about, what would you do if somebody sent you a naked picture? What would you do if it was somebody you didn't know? What would you do if it was one of your friends? What would you do if it was, somebody younger than you? What would you do if it was somebody older than you? What if it was this? What if it was that? And you don't have to go into lots of detail. And the main thing is just What would you do if somebody sent you an inappropriate picture? And let them tell you what's an inappropriate picture. And then kind of listen to their response and then give them some guidance about, well, you wouldn't share that because that could really hurt somebody's feelings because they probably didn't mean for other people to see that. You wouldn't share that. You could let me know. And again, depending on the child's age and what's going on in their life, some other answers you might come up with about what would you do if. But the question is great for kids of just about any age. You can also say, has this ever happened? Have you seen other people send these kind of pictures? Have you heard about this happening? So you don't even have to ask if it's happened to them. You don't even have to say, what would you do if you could say, have you heard about this happening with other people your age? Does this happen at your school with your friends? And again, give that child time to respond. Wait, let them think about what they're going to say. And again, to have these conversations over time repeatedly, and maybe not in just exactly the same way every time, so that you're giving your child an opportunity to think about this conversation that you had a week ago, and maybe come back and revisit it in a slightly different way. And they'll have had a little bit of time. They might even go talk to their friends. You know what my mom asked me? And they might talk about it, and the other one might say, gosh, my mom asked me the same thing. What would you do if, I didn't tell her that this happened? And the more that we can do as parents to be good listeners, to be calm when our kids tell us things, the more likely our kids are going to be to tell us when they have a problem, and let us know when there's a puzzle or something they can't figure out. The more likely they're going to be to come to us when something is really serious, to if they don't feel like they're going to get in trouble or we're going to get mad, we're going to overreact. And that's, as parents, that's what we want. All of us want our kids to be safe, and we want to be there to help them if they have a problem. And often kids won't tell us because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble or going to get somebody else in trouble. So if we can be calm, kids are much more likely to tell us what they're dealing with.
So that's a great segue into the last question, which is what do you do if your child or a child that you're close to comes to you and says that somebody has abused them?
Well, thanks for asking about that. The very first thing is to stay calm, to think about your demeanor. This is a child that you know, and so it's likely to be really upsetting, especially if it's your own child. And if it's a child that you know, and or especially a child in your family, it's very likely the person that did this to them is someone that you also know. It's very rare for children to be sexually abused by strangers. About 90% of the time, the child and even the family know the perpetrator, but certainly the child knows who this person is. So the first thing is to think about your facial expressions and your tone of voice, and just stay calm. And we can all imagine what the child's reaction might be if we were to get angry or start yelling or overreact in some way. A child would just shut down and not tell you anything else. So the first thing is to stay calm. The second thing, to think carefully about the words that you say, but just say something like, thank you for telling me. I believe you. And allow for silence. Give the child time to think and decide what they want to tell you next. We really urge that you don't ask lots of questions. In fact, it's probably best not to ask any questions at all if you can avoid it. So thank you for telling me. I believe you. And say something like, you can tell me more. And I'm going to get you some help. You can say something like, I'm not sure exactly what that looks like yet, but I'm going to be here to support you and help you. I'm going to try to get you some help. And you can tell me more. That's really all you need to say. And then if that happens, if a child's disclosed to you that they were abused, or it sounds like from what they've told you that they've been abused, then what you need to do is you need to make a report. If a child's disclosed to you, first of all, understand that it's very unusual. Most kids don't tell. So you should feel really honored that that child trusted you enough to tell you. And you can be pretty sure it was difficult for them to do. They probably thought about it before they did it, before they told you, and they were probably really scared what your reaction was going to be. But then you need to report it. So how do you make a report? If you're in Alabama, you want to call the Alabama Department of Human Resources. And if you're in another state, you want to call Child Protective Services in that state. And one of the, you can just call 911 if you're not sure. So you can report it to law enforcement or Child Protective Services. And in most places, Child Protective Services and law enforcement work together, and they will let them do the investigation. So if a child discloses to you, or if you have a strong suspicion a child's being abused, the best thing you can do is listen to the child if they're talking to you. Don't ask a lot of questions. Tell them you'll be there. Tell them you believe them. Thank them for telling you. And then make a report and let the professional investigators investigate. Don't try to be the investigator. The child doesn't need that from you. Professionals can investigate, and you can just be there to listen and be calm, and tell the child you believe them. That's your role, and to make that report.
Pam, thank you so much. This was super helpful. I think it's going to give a lot of parents and adults who have children in their lives some great um, tips on how to have these tough conversations. And just to help that along, we're going to include some resources in this post, including our family norms discussion sheet, which is a great resource to help you start that conversation, especially if you're not really sure how. We are also going to share some ways that you can get some training if you would like to learn more about how you can protect children in your community. We have stewards of children trainings that are available. So again, thank you for your time today, and we hope that you have a great rest of April.